Okay, this will be number 2 in a series of, I don't know, maybe, who knows, this could be the last one. The last time I made a video here in my elaborate office, I talked about using histogram on that camera, Nikon Z6, to figure out the exposure setting for old Nikon lens that will not meter on that camera. I don't care if you go into the menu and set up non CPU lenses or not, unless somebody's come up with some way that I can't figure out. When you go into the you go into the menu and you put in a non CPU lens and you give it a number and you tell it the focal length and you tell it the maximum aperture. In this case, this is an old E series 50 millimeter, the cheaper of the two, the E series 50 millimeter 1.8 lens that I bought a couple cameras ago, I think on eBay, and I think I spent $35 or $40 for it. And to be honest with you, as far as sharpness, I don't know what everybody's looking at, and maybe I don't have as good an eye, but as far as sharpness and everything like that, that E series 50 millimeter lens, in my opinion, is as sharp as pretty much anything you'll find. I have a 50 millimeter f1.2. I have a 28 millimeter. I forget what the f2.4 I want to say, that's supposed to be one of the sharpest lenses they ever made. And this thing's just as sharp. I have the brand new 24-70 S series zoom lens that is no sharper than this. And for the kind of work I'm doing right now, where I'm sitting in one place, it's not an autofocus lens. It makes zero difference, I don't think. Anyway, I'm going to get into it, and it's probably too long of a video because it's going to take me forever to explain it, but I'm going to try to explain it. And then you guys that know more than me can explain to me, can tell me the error of what I'm seeing that's wrong. If you pull up, we're talking about using non-CPU lenses on a Nikon Z6, non-CPU lens, non-autofocus lens, and I'm using a histogram as my guide to set my aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Key in this whole thing, at least at this point, is to put my ISO on auto. I should have taken a minute to go back through the menu settings and give you the exact menu numbers to do that. And it's a little bit tricky, I'll tell you that right now. It's a little bit tricky. I think it's under ISO sensitivity. You have to set it to auto, and then below that there's 2 or 3 things you can do. You could set it for your maximum ISO, maybe your minimum ISO. I have set those numbers at big numbers, like my maximum ISO is like the limit, H7 or whatever it goes to, H3 as far as high ISO. And so I set the limits really big so that the camera adjusts to a spot it wants to be, aperture and shutter speed wise and ISO wise, to give you a good exposure. And it works pretty good. It works pretty good. So with that lens, I can take that 50 millimeter lens, I can set the f-stop at 2.8. I could set the shutter speed at, so the reciprocal of that might be, I don't know, 1/28 or 1/28 of a second. So I'll set it at 1/50th or 1/60th of a second. That coupled with the vibration reduction features in that camera, I can handhold that thing at 1/60th of a second at f2.8 with no visible camera shake that I see. And I'm not, anyway, I don't think I'm the steadiest guy in the world. But the point is that what happens is, and I don't understand histograms as well as some of the people out there that probably do, but I'm drawing a histogram right now. If you can see this, and you probably can't, let's just say this is a histogram, and these are the bars. What you're going to see is, as you change your shutter speed and aperture, you're going to see that histogram. If you go into display, you can push a button on there on your display to show a histogram on the display. What you're going to see is that histogram has bars in it. If your shutter speed and aperture settings are way off, that histogram, all the bars on it crowd to one side or the other. As you begin to change those settings, maybe to let more light in or slow down the shutter, you will notice that the histogram bars begin to fill that little square in the histogram so that you have a little bit of room on the right side and a little bit of room on the left side with no bars. Once that camera gets in that comfort range and you continue to open up or close down your aperture, for example, or speed up or slow down your shutter speed, for example, you will notice that the histogram does not actually move. What the camera does is it starts to go into it's thinking, oh, I can move the ISO around to keep that histogram, the exposure, in the comfort zone. Once it gets in that comfort zone, you can run that shutter speed and aperture up 4, 5, 6 stops up or down, shutter speed 4, 5, 6 stops up or down, and that histogram remains the same, and the only thing that changes then is the ISO. And so, super easy to do, and the exposure is fine. And I'm not sure that I see a whole lot of difference once that histogram gets into that comfort zone and you start moving those shutter speeds and apertures up and down. The histogram essentially doesn't move around. It's telling you, that's where that camera is telling you, that's where I want to be for exposure, and it's pretty good. So you could take that camera outside with that 50mm lens, set the ISO on auto, set your shutter speed and aperture at whatever you want, and basically point and shoot that thing at anything you want, and almost not play too much with the focus. So because the 50mm is, and so you could take and say, put your f-stop at about f5.6 and set it at infinity or just a little bit less for focus distance, and use it as a point and shoot, and it'll move the ISO up and down wherever it needs to be, and you could just plink away and take pictures without almost touching anything. And so you talk about an ideal camera for street photography or just walking around taking pictures of things. You can take a picture of anything. It just automatically adjusts. And I'll try to explain that a little bit better if I haven't already. In your comments, maybe you can point out to me where I'm not doing a good job with explanation. I'm going to let this be my second video for right now. I'm going to probably someday do something other than wear sweatpants, which are basically pajamas, and a bullshit t-shirt, and hopefully make a video eventually that somebody's going to want to watch. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.